Welcome to this Pre-Marital Seminar, a couple's guide to readiness for marriage. My name is Reverend Keith Mazingo, and the topics that we are covering today are previous relationships, such as marriages, divorces, unions, civil unions, and dissolutions, children, families support, the compatibility of faith and worship, conflict resolution, health, finances, sex, and wills and powers of attorney. We will also be discussing legal weddings versus union ceremonies. We will also include links to sample ceremonies as well as vendors for venues, wedding directors, officiants, flowers, music, photographers, and more. All right, so first of all, I just want to say welcome. We're glad that you came and hope that you enjoy this class, the seminar. First of all, first topic on here is this. If you have been married before and you are not currently divorced from that legal wedding, you must get legally divorced before you can get legally remarried. Also, if you have had a holy union or some kind of union ceremony, that is not a legal document, not a civil union, because a civil union you would have to go and deal with that too. But a just done in the church, like we do here in Metropolitan Community Church. If you have had a union, that does not mean that you are now legally married. You still have to go get a marriage license. You still must be pronounced husband and husband, wife and wife, husband and wife, before it can become legal. So the documents, it is a legal binding contract. That's what we have been fighting for all this time. So if you've had previous relationships, you need to take care of that previous relationship. If you've had a holy union with the person you're thinking about marrying at this point, that's fine. You still have to go through the process. If you are now with another partner and you have not dissolved through a minister, preferably the same minister that performed that holy union, specifically in Metropolitan Community Church, we have something called a dissolution of holy union. So if you've had a holy union with someone and you're no longer with that person and now you want to marry someone, I always ask as a minister, you need to go back and take care of that. And if I were in relationship with someone who was in a relationship with someone and had made a commitment such as marriage by holy union, I would want them to go take care of it as best they can. And so there are parameters around how that's done, whether they have to do it together or they can do it separately, but we can work through that on an individual case. The deal is, if you have had a former marriage that's legal, make sure you take care of that before you try to get married again, because you must have that legally taken care of. So, children. Some of you may have children. Some of you may want children. Whenever I do these seminars, the point of this is not so much that I know the answer to this, but it's that you have talked about it with each other so that you have this discussion. Now, I realize there are multiple couples here today, so you may not want to discuss it in front of all the other couples. So you can take home, some homework and really do the work of this. But there's some important things. One, if you already have children, then you need to pay attention as to how that is going to bear on you being legally married. Because now that child is going to have another step parent or have a step parent. If you are having shared custody or you have full custody, it may have some bearing on that. So you need to check with the courts, the ones you've worked with already if you've gone through the court system, and make sure that everything is still kosher. You want to make sure that everything goes along. Also, if you have not talked with your spouse or your fiance about the possibility of children, whether you want children, whether you're adamantly opposed to having children, this is something that can either really pull a couple together or really push them apart. You really need to come to some agreement on what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. So children do play an important role. Now, it's also going to play a role down in the bottom part of this, the last thing we talk about down there in the topics with the wills and powers of attorney, because when you are legally married, different states have different rules and different laws. So you need to look at what it is that is joint property, how property is laid out with a legal spouse, as opposed to someone you've been in union with, or it's just a boyfriend or girlfriend, or even if it's someone you've been with together 40 years. Makes no difference. You have no legal right to property. It changes just like that when you become married. So that may play a role in too if you have children from a former marriage. You have to pay attention to how all of that plays out and make informed decisions. Have a discussion. It's not a no-no. It's a good thing. Yes, you want to sit down and have a mature adult conversation. We need to take care of business. We want to take care of the business of property, how we want things dispersed. When we pass away, how does everything line up? Where do I fit in all of this? And make sure that everybody comes to an agreement so that there's not big arguments later. There's no need for all of that. And then you can see how that, you can put it in writing and make it work. The next thing I talk to couples about is family support. If it is a straight heterosexual wedding, that does not necessarily mean that all the family is behind it. How many of us have been to weddings where we shook our heads and said, "Oh, Lord, this is never going to make it. Why in the world are they thinking?" Or we've had family members that said that about other family members' weddings. It happens. It doesn't mean just because someone wants to get married that everybody's going to be behind it. But specifically to same-sex couples, I find that it's very important to build a support system. Sometimes we have families that are right there. We had a wedding here Friday night, and one partner's family, 15 of them showed up to wish them well and do it right and go out to eat and celebrate and be happy. And the other person's family, not one person showed up. They don't want anything to do with it. They've written them off. They want no part of it. So it's very important that you have a family support. When I say family support, I'm not just talking about blood family. I'm talking about that you have a support system built in. And if you do not currently have that, then it's time to start working on that. Because I have not been married legally. I have not been in a holy union. But I have been in a long-term relationship. And I can say this, that there are times you need some support. There's some times you need to know other people are there for you. Not so you can tell them all your business. Not so you can just go blast your partner away at them. I don't mean it that way. I just mean sometimes you go through things together that you need a bigger circle. And so it's very important to have family support. And if you can get blood support, that's wonderful. But it doesn't always work, especially in our community. So just be aware of that. That's one of the reasons that we come to church. I say it all the time. I don't just come to church to worship, even though that's the part of what I do. It's about community. It's about building community. It's about going out and doing good things. But it's also about having people around me that can celebrate my joys and can mourn with me when I mourn. It's my chosen family. As a minister, I always feel an obligation to ask people this. Is the person that you're talking about marrying Is their faith compatible with your faith? Now, in the old days, when I say the old days, like 50 years ago, if the preacher would have said, if you're a Christian, you've got to marry a Christian. If you're a Buddhist, you've got to marry a Buddhist. If now we're a lot more open-minded, and the world is a much broader place. We're much more global in our thinking as well as the realities of life. Now, personally, I don't care what your faith system is and your spouse's faith system is. I don't care what your belief systems are. But are your values compatible? Or is there anything in your faith tradition that's going to hinder this relationship from moving forward? I have seen families split because one was going to be Baptist and one was going to be Catholic, and they couldn't go to church together, they couldn't worship together, and those are both Christian faiths, let alone if one is Muslim and one's Christian. What does that do? And then we're back to family support again, aren't we? We're back to having a place of safety. So I always encourage people, make sure you get to something. That doesn't mean you have to agree on everything. It doesn't mean you have to believe exactly the same, because if you can find that, Lord, do please let me know, because I have never seen it in my entire life where you believe every single thing just alike. That's not the point. The point is it compatible? It doesn't have to be matching luggage. It has to be compatible luggage. Now, conflict resolution, next topic. How do you deal with conflict resolution? And at this point, I think we should be a little interactive, if you don't mind sharing.
I just slap her. That's what I do. You're lying at church.
She just slaps her, she said.
You're lying at church.
Well, we never fight, but in the hypothetical, context, if we ever did happen to get into a fight, I would like to think it's just, we get it out and give each other some time. And, breaking up's never an option. It's just, there's another fine mess we got to deal with.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
It's nice to know it doesn't matter if we fight, it's just going to be, we're going to fight. It's not, oh my God, is this going to be what breaks us up? It's just going to be, here goes another fight.
I probably should have prefaced this, since you answered the way you did, is if any of you are here under undue stress, you didn't choose, but you were ordered to be here, and you really don't want to be here because you are afraid of the consequences later, you need to see one of us. You could sneak out to the restroom or something during this process and not come back. If you're being mistreated, abused against your will, and I have to be careful because we have some very wide range community here. This is, 2015, so there's all sorts of 50 shades. And, who knows what's out there. And things that people tell me in my office, and I'm just kind of, okay. But if someone is hurting you against your will, you do not need to be married to this person. If they are abusing you, if you need to get out of that situation. If you do not know how to do that, then see me. Find a way to talk to me. I can help you get out of that. Conflict resolution. When I was a kid, there was a show on TV called My Three Sons. And I always loved that Steve, the dad, whenever there was a fight in the house, or misunderstanding, or disagreement, he would just not say anything. He would say, I need to go take a walk. And he would go walk around the neighborhood and just keep walking around and around the block. And I just thought that was so ideal, because that was not at all what happened in my house. That was not reality, because my parents were highly emotive, and they would have an argument, and they would just yell it out, and And I'm highly emotive, and I find that I probably just need to get it out of my system. You were just mentioning that. Get it out of my system, and then it's okay. Once I get it out of my system, I'll be okay if you'll just give me a few minutes to rethink and recalculate. But I'm probably going to be, say some things that happened 12 years ago before it's over with. I have a really good memory sometimes, and I can, bring up things from the past, and then I have to go back and repent of all of that, and I have to think about, what's good about the relationship. That's just one issue. That's not a lifetime. I like what you said. It's just a fight. It's going to blow over. It's, we've been here before. We'll go through it again. It's not a breakup moment. So that's something very important to keep. When I moved here, there was a couple. We've been together a long time, and they started having some issues. And one of my friends came to me and said, I don't think they're going to make it through this. And I said, they're going to make it through this. No, you just don't know how bad it is. People at church just don't know. People in the neighborhood just don't know. But I've witnessed some things. I said, it will be fine. You know why I know it's going to be fine? Because when I first met them, one of the first things they said to me was, we got together 20 plus years ago, and we made a commitment that come what may, we were sticking it out. We are in this for the long haul. There is no backing out. We will find a way to get through it. And they've had several of those since then, since I've been here in Baton Rouge. And guess what? They got through it every single time. And my friend came back to me and said, well, I just wouldn't have believed it, but you're absolutely right. It just blew right on over, and you would never know anything was wrong. I said, I told you. They are in it for the long run. They are in it for life. And I think that's really important with couples. Are you in it for life, or are you in it till the next conflict?
But it doesn't, just because you have a conflict, it doesn't mean anything necessarily gets resolved, because that's about perspective too. You have to kind of look at the big picture, and not everything is going to get resolved to the degree that you believe it needs to be resolved. You follow what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So compromise is not always picture perfect to everybody getting their way about what they think resolution really should look like.
Right.
You agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
That's one of my big problems is Jen's one of those people that when she's angry, she just needs to stew. And I need to talk it out and work it out. So I'm sitting there trying to talk it out and work it out. And she's like, just leave me alone. I was like, no, we got to work with this.
For a minute.
Just leave me
You
alone.
and I can analyze things and hash it out, and then Sandy and her can get together.
There you go. And they can just kind of sit there in a room like this.
And see, if I can say some really mean things if I don't sit a minute and think about what I want to say and get it all out, and then that's how I do that.
Some people are emotional, and it gets in the way of really coming down to some strong conflict resolution, okay? And some people are strongly analytical, and there's no place for emotion in anything that they look at, okay? So, one, you have to have emotions because they're wonderful to have around, but from a business perspective, an analytical mind works best. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
So to have a good relationship, you need to understand the great gifts each of them have, and put them best to use in a situation to get for the greater good.
And look at what just happened. You have identified this happens with this couple, this happens with this couple. It's very similar.
Very similar.
But you handle things very differently. You process differently. You work through it differently. The point of all of this is that you know how she works through it, and she knows how you work through it. And you find a way to make that work. Because you can't always, sometimes you just got to you got to say it right now. And sometimes she just has to close the door and say, no, you can't. You may have to say it through the door, and she has her earplugs in. But at some point, you can get a chance to sit down and say that again. A guy broke up with me one time years ago. And I wrote him this long letter trying to figure out, because he didn't give me any reason. He just walked out. One day he was there, and the next day he wasn't. There was just no rhyme or reason. And one day I wrote him this 20-page letter, of course, highly emotive here. And what's going on? Why aren't you telling me anything? I need something besides this, because I got to analyze, I got to process. And he just sent me a simple note back. In fact, he left it on the piano at church because I was the music director. And it just said, Keith, sometimes there's no answer. And you just have to learn to live with it. And I did not like him at all. And I had to play through service like that with that on my mind, just as mad as a wet setting hen.
The reasoning mind has to have a reason.
I had to have a reason, but to him there was no reason. He really didn't have a reason. He just, it was just, it had run its course to him, and that was that. He moved on. He was done. And he really couldn't answer it himself. So how could he give me an answer when he couldn't answer it to himself?
Did that soften your analytical mind and give you a bigger, did you learn from something from that?
I learned a lot from that. And I have used that with couples over and over and over. Sometimes there's no obvious reason. Sometimes I have to allow that person to, if they can't answer it for themselves, they certainly can't answer it for me. So I have to let it go. There are just some things you can't have. I'd like to have a new truck that's the size I want that gets 50 miles to the gallon. But the truth of the matter is, it just ain't going to happen. It's out there, the technology is there, but they're just not going to let me have it. So I have to learn to live with that choice, I have to live with that. So there are just things in your relationships that you have to let go of. Some things you just have to say, well, I disagree, and we're not going to like this, and it's never going to be resolved. But I can live with the not knowing or the not resolution. I can live with.
The thing that you have to understand is there's some things that you just cannot accept, at least at that point in time of your life.
Right.
Can you accept it 5 years from now, 10 years from now? There's certain things that you will get to a loggerhead, and it'll be like, this is just totally and absolutely unacceptable. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
There is enough reason to believe that I cannot move off this mark because it's so strong. Do you see what I'm saying? Those are the places that you don't want to be in a relationship.
And it's hard to say, if they're that way now, yes, it may not be worth going forward.
No.
9 times out of 10, after an argument, we end up both apologizing anyway. So
You have to be able to agree to disagree and never go to bed mad. Never.
I can't say that never happened at my house, but
we like to cuddle too much. It would be too difficult.
oh, I might cuddle, but I'll be mad. If I'm still processing, I'm still processing.
You're still laying there processing, but you didn't go to bed mad, you're still processing.
That's right. Cool. I love it. Thank y'all for sharing that.
Mine just lets me talk. And he says, and then I make a mistake. He says, now, baby, was that, he writes me a letter. He says, baby, when you said this, it hurt my feelings. Was that your bipolar? Was it your emotions? And then I come back, and one thing I think that I owe him is just like an honest answer to his questions. I want to go step by step on this letter. Baby, I want you to understand why I said this, and I didn't mean it like that. And a lot of times it's just like what you were saying about perception. No, I didn't mean it like that. Yeah, I didn't mean it like this, Dustin. I said that, and I meant this, And he said, okay. I understand, And then what happens is he's so country, He says 5 or 6 things, okay? And it just soothes me. He just like calms me right down. He can talk me down. I love that. There's not too many people, that can take. He just says 5 little things. And then all of a sudden I'm so cool and calm and hot. Just, okay, so when you're getting out, we can get started.
And that's a good segue into the next topic, which is health. And that is about health. I don't need to know all of your ailments. We don't all need to discuss all of those. But there are a couple things you need to do as couples. One is make sure that you have discussed with your partner anything that's going on with you health-wise. Mental health, physical health, emotional health. If you're bipolar, medications, depression, that kind of stuff, make sure that you tell someone. If you have diabetes, if you have heart trouble, you know, any of those things that you have not discussed. Now, most couples have already discussed those things, but sometimes, you know, if there's been that little thing that you've been putting off because you don't want to admit it to yourself, you need to tell your partner. Because what if you end up on the floor unconscious somewhere and they don't know what to say because they don't know you've been having an issue? You need to be able to figure out what's going on and talk to the EMTs. The other thing is, it's not just about your health, but you need to talk to your partner about your family history of health. It's just like if you go to the doctor, one of the first things they're going to do is sit down with a list. Anybody in your family have diabetes? Anybody have heart trouble? Anybody have cancer? Anybody? And you have to list all of these different people. It's important for your partner to know that, especially now same-sex couples, because you're going to be the person that is called first to find out this information. You're unconscious in the hospital. Well, what's their family health like? Well, I don't know. I don't know anybody in their family. Or I don't know their family health. It's important that you know each other's family health history. What runs in the biological family health, if you know it. If you don't know it, you can't tell it. But it's important to know so that you can give that information should it become necessary. And also for you to know yourself what the future may hold. You know, both my grandfathers died of heart attacks. My dad died of heart attack. And one or two of his brothers died with heart attacks. Heart attacks happen to the men in my family. I need to pay attention to that. So I'm constantly, you know, have you checked my heart? Would you check my heart at this, you know? But if I was in a relationship, I would want my partner to know that. It's not just about me. It's a history of this so that they know kind of, oh, you know, they know what to watch for. They know symptoms to look for. So it's important that you know not just your partner's health issues, but also, and just as important, that you discuss your own health issues with your partner. No secrets. Can't have any secrets there. You got to tell them. But also know their family history so that you can reference that if you need to.
Well, then it becomes a problem to try to manage their issues. You know what I'm saying? Make sure that they manage those issues because it has such a strong impact on you going forward.
Right.
You know, for them to be on top of their health game.
Right.
And that's not always easy to do. You know, that becomes a conflict in itself sometimes.
Yes, it does. And the thing is that you have to decide if you can be in a relationship with someone who will not take care of themselves, and you've got to be the caretaker and the reminder and the parent.
Correct. Not a good position to be in.
No, but a lot of couples are in that position, and you have to decide that. Some people will decide, yes, I can handle this. Other people won't. But it's okay. I'm not saying one's right and wrong. That's not what it's about. It's about what you are willing to work with. Fair enough? Let's talk about finances. Finances, when I was a child, if you got married, automatically became joint checking accounts and savings accounts and all of that kind of stuff. We live in a very different world. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. You're certainly welcome to have joint bank accounts. I've worked with couples that put everything together. I've worked with couples who kept only separate accounts and decided who was paying what. I've had couples, I think probably the most modern way that I've seen is couples that have one joint account to pay the household bills out of and still maintain their separate accounts. And here's what I encourage couples to do. If you are going to do that, I encourage you to put a percentage of your income into the pot, into the joint account. A percentage. Because if you're making very different incomes, I had one couple come in my office. One was my age, and his partner was like 25 or something. One of them made like $1,000, let's say $1,000 a week. I'm just pulling figures out. One makes $1,000 a week. Another one makes $500 a week. But he expected both of them to put $500 a month into the joint account. And I said, but you do understand that that's not equal. Well, yes, it is. It's both $500. No, it's not equal. You both put a percentage, which means one puts more actual dollars in than the other. But if you want to be equal, it's sort of like, I can get my pastor's hat and talk about tithing. We all pay 10% of our income to the church. If we're all tithing, then we're all paying the same amount. That doesn't mean the same dollar amount, but the same amount percentage. So I would encourage you to, if you're going to have a joint account, to do a percentage that you pay the bills out of. And of course, you have to do a little figuring. You have to figure out what your bills are going to be and make sure that that's covered. And then how you're going to do that. Not every couple wants to do all of that. Some couples, like I said, keep them separate. And they decide, I'm going to pay the rent, you pay the lights, I'm going to buy the groceries this month, you buy the groceries next month. It doesn't matter how you work all of that out. What does matter is that you have some kind of system where you know how to expect so that you don't, what if you're saving up to buy a house? What if you're saving up to buy another car? What if you're saving up for, just for new outfits, okay? Or an anniversary weekend away kind of thing. Fine. How you got to keep all of that lined up. So work on your budgets together and decide how you're going to distribute the money. Most of the time, by the time couples get to this point where they're talking to me about getting married, they've already discussed that. But occasionally, people haven't talked about it all the way through, and they have an expectation, well, we'll do like Mom and Daddy did it. And everything will just be in one pot. And that means my money is your money is our money kind of thing. That's not always the case. Work it out together into a format that you're both comfortable with. Fair enough? My favorite subject. We're going to talk about sex. Okay, so I want to know, first of all, is it good?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, again, I don't need to know these things. Here's what I find out with couples. I've met with couples through the years. Some couples that are asexual, meaning they have no interest in a sexual life at all. They are in it as partners. They like each other. They don't want to grow old alone. And this person's compatible in most ways. And
They call themselves what? A homosexual with asexual tendencies or what?
I don't know what
What's the deal?
I don't know. You'll have to ask them. That's not my concern. My concern is, are you happy? Are you happy with your sex life currently? Are you happy with the frequency? That's a big question. And it is very rare that a couple comes into my office and tells me that they are both happy with the frequency. One always wants more, one always wants less. I don't know why. It just seems that way constantly. I don't care about all of that. That's up to you too.
Gay men or gay women?
Both.
Both of them equally?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. Mostly women.
And what is the age classification that fall into this mindset?
I haven't found much age difference. Either everybody is sort of the same. All over the place.
Nothing to do with this. Okay.
The one couple, like I said, I've had couples that were getting married. It was a matter of making a commitment to each other. They liked each other. They were building, taking care of house. They obviously loved each other. They're still together, and that was years ago. They're still together. Have no interest in a sex life at all. I don't know if that was due to health issues. I don't know if that was just because they're both asexual. but they just said they have no interest in that part of it. That's their business. I don't care. As long as they're both happy, that's the thing. And I'm probably one of the few pastors that will tell you, I believe in premarital sex. I absolutely believe that that is an important part of your life, and that if that part is not working for you, then I would not want to go make a lifetime commitment to somebody, and I realize it's not a lifetime commitment to most people. 50% of the time, 53% of the time of church people, which is way higher than the national average. But if it's not working, you need to know that. Before you get married, absolutely. I really do believe that. I believe.
How else would you know that unless you had premarital sex? That would
you could talk about it. You really could talk about it in great detail without actually having sex, I guess.
I think that conversation would lead into.
Well, it may, or it may do the opposite. Because what if you don't like anything you're hearing?
You have sex and it's not worth a crap, then what? I mean, I'm just being honest.
Right.
That's how I think about it. I'm like, go for it, because if you marry somebody and then
And there's no chemistry.
You gotta test drive the vehicle before you buy it.
Yes, that's what I was getting at. There you go. I mean,
I absolutely believe that. And I believe, for me, it's even a spiritual issue.
yes.
For me, I was taught it being a spiritual issue to not do it, to save yourself for the one. Well, you can still save yourself for the one, but what if that person is all 50 Shades of Grey and wants BDSM, and you just want romance and the sweet, slow lovemaking, and that's all you can handle, and they can't handle that. They want to beat you to a pulp and, tie you up and all of it. And I will be honest with you. I used to, as a child, I worried about finding the one. Daddy, how am I going to know? I used to ask my daddy all the time, how am I going to know? And he'd say, oh, son, don't worry about that. You'll know. You'll just know. Well, how will I know? You'll just know. Quit worrying about it. You'll just know. I finally got through that, and then as I came into my teenage years and hormones started going, I was like, Daddy, what if I find the one and then I marry them and we don't enjoy sex? What am I supposed to? He said, oh, now this is my daddy Church of God voice. My daddy would say, now son, you're just going to have to find a submissive girl. Submissive, good King James Version word right there, submissive girl. But you will discover what turns her on. You will explore her body, and you will.
Say that to you?
Yes, he said you will find what she likes, and that's what your goal is to please her. So you'll like whatever she likes. That's what he said. And it did ease me. It's like, oh, okay, so I just have to, whatever I'm doing, as long as it pleases the other person, then I'll be happy with it. But not everybody can do that. And I think we do our own selves an injustice. When we don't, I'm not saying we should go into a sexual relationship or any relationship when it's just all about me.
It should never be all about you.
No, it really should. My dad was,
That's the biggest
he hit the...
thing out there is for it not to be all about you, that somebody get totally engrossed in the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Feed off each other like that.
But notice what you just said, feed off
Yes,
each
right.
other.
Feed off of
You feed off of each other. You get turned on because they're turned on.
Yeah. It's like
You get all of the goosebumps because you're making something happen for that other person. It's not just all about me. Okay? And I've had friends that got in relationships, and I'm going to be very bold, if that's okay. That's one reason I don't have children here, so that we can have an adult conversation. I've had two guys that were both bottoms or both tops. Start dating. And that means somebody is getting left out. I'm not saying it can't go for a while, but I have not seen it go over and over and over. Either that or they have to make a commitment and have in their covenant that they can explore outside of the two of them. This is reality. And it's the day we live in. It's okay. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. In fact, we can talk about your covenants. We're going to talk about that down here. But your covenants have to be what you agree on. And what you two agree on doesn't necessarily have to be what you two agree on, nor what you agree on. It's your covenant. You get to decide where the parameters are, what happens and what doesn't happen. But already, the sexual part, I'm just telling you, one of my best friends, Daryl Mitchell, used to say, he'd say, honey, you better try it out first. He said, 90% of any relationship is sex. The rest of it's just gravy. He said, if you've got, and what he meant by that was, if that part is really good, you can work out the conflicts, you can work out all of the other issues, the political issues.
Because everything's minimized
it is.
When you're sexually fulfilled is maximized. Yeah, it changes your whole perspective.
And I will tell you something that I've also found. A lot of times when your spirituality and your sexuality, a lot of times your spirituality and your sexuality, when one is at a height, the other one has a height. When one is at a low, the other one is at a low. You need to pay attention to that. I'm not saying that's always, but I'm saying you will see that happen. Just saying. Of course, I heard a counselor say that, and I was like, that can't be right. And then I thought, maybe it's right, because when you are, maybe that's as close to living in the spirit world as you can get when you're orgasmic. Because it's, and you're sharing that moment with that person that you really want to be sharing that moment with. So there's a love and there's a spiritual component that comes into all of that. So you're not leaving God out of that. And I really believe that you have to work to make that compatible. Here's the other thing. I've had a couple, probably more than one, but I can think of one couple in particular, where one said, I don't want any sex. I have some health issues and I'm just not allowed. I just can't. And I looked at the other partner and I said, and how do you feel it? No, it's all about her. I don't care. I love her and this is not going to be an issue. And I said, I'm really not so sure I believe you. Let me tell you why. Because while it's not about me, I have to get something out of this. Maybe she can't do everything you would like to do, but are you going to put yourself into this situation where you go into a marriage knowing there's going to be no sex at all? None. And say, well, we love each other, so it won't matter. I'm telling you, it does matter. By the way, they have had a dissolution, and now one of them is happily married to someone and having great sex, which she should have done to start with. No offense. Doesn't mean the other person was a bad person. She had health issues. She couldn't help it. But it's just what it is. You have to decide if you can live with that. I went to counseling one time, and I was trying to work through some issues of relationship and also my profession at the time. And I wasn't sure I wanted to be a pastor anymore. This was not since I've been here, by the way. This was many years ago. I wasn't sure I wanted to be a pastor anymore. And he said, well, what would you do? He said, why are you a pastor then? I said, well, I feel called to ministry. There's something in my spirit that just pushes me and pulls me at the same time to just do it. And he said, well, if you weren't pastoring, how else would you do ministry? And I started listing off, well, I'd really like to do this, and I'd really like to do that, and I'd really like to do the other. And he said, well, then why are you doing that? And I said, because I want to be sure, number one, that I please God. And number two, I want to take care of God's children. And I feel like pastors do that. We take care of God's children. Doesn't mean I can fix everything for everybody. And a lot of times it's just knowing pastors there. If you need, sort of like if you don't need to go anywhere today, but it sure feels good that there's a car sitting outside, doesn't it? Because when my truck is not there, I need to go 15 places. And I can't go. Then I'm just stressed all day. He said to me, what are you doing? This is the counselor. He said, what are you doing to take care of that child of God? And he pointed at me. He said, aren't you a child of God? And I said, well, of course I am. He said, well, what are you doing to take care of that child of God? And I realized that it wasn't just about putting everybody else first either. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. In other words, you've got to take care of yourself or you're no good to take care of anybody else. You've got to love yourself or you're no good to love someone else. You've got to put all of that into perspective. It doesn't mean it's an egotistical thing and you're only in it for yourself, but it does mean there's a healthy balance. And it does mean as a couple you need to explain, you need to have very, very sober conversations, very truthful conversations. What's working for you sexually? What is not working for you sexually? If you're not getting as much sex as you'd like, say so. If you're getting more than you'd like, say so. If there's something you would like to try but you haven't brought it up, bring it up. Bring it up. I mean, my goodness, you've got the perfect opportunity. I thought when that, I haven't read 50 Shades of Grey, and I tease about that book and about the movie. But the good thing that I see that's come out of that, of course, what I've heard of it doesn't make me want to go read it or see it, right? Because it just seems like a world that's different than my world. So, but what I want to say about that is, it's brought up the opportunity for people to have a discussion and say, well, that's way over the top, but I wouldn't mind doing this. Have you thought about this? Where's the whipped cream?
People hesitate to talk about sex. It's the weirdest thing. It's like an issue they skirt away from. To get on it, they don't even want to talk about Jesus, really. Okay? They start wanting to kind of back away from a serious conversation. So you don't want to talk about politics, their mama, or sex, or really Jesus, really, when you push them in the corner. Okay? So talking about sex is really a good thing. It really is a good thing to make it feel like it's okay to engage in it, okay? And people don't understand sex the way it really should be done. Do you know what I'm saying? Because there's something deep inside that keeps that spiritual and that sexual thing taboo. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's like the deepest place ever, that's the most special place ever, but yet people don't want to bring themselves to that dance. And it really should be something that should be comfortable to talk about, but nothing's going to be comfortable unless you actually do it and start doing it and go, hey, it's okay to talk about it. Wow, that opened me up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it should be a good thing. People should talk about it more and feel liberated by it.
I can tell the couples that whenever I'm doing this one-on-one with the couples in my office, sometimes in my office, it's the first time they've had a discussion about their own sex lives.
I work on a lot of different clients, okay, from all walks of life, okay? And it's amazing when they come see me. I guess it's the bonding experience of touch, okay? But they just open up. And there is so many people that will start talking. It takes a lot of years because I don't bring it up, I let them. But to be able to talk to me about all different subjects and even sex, and it's not ethically, it's like something we shy away from by our licensing, okay? So nothing's done inappropriately, but you can see the liberation of being able to talk
Right.
on that level about so many different things, including the sexual thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll open up about how they are with their wife, and it's just, there's a lot of sexual problems out there, even with the heterosexual.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
You see what I'm saying?
And a lot of it's because they don't talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
They do what's expected roles.
And I have people that are going to counseling, and even the counselor is skittish with it. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's like, wow, how are you ever going to get that fixed if you go into a professional that's skittish with it? So, just saying.
My bottom line is talk about it, experiment with it, be open and honest. If something is not working, be willing to say that in a loving way. you know, I love it when you do this, but I'm not so much into that. And be able to be honest about it. And also realize that what works today, that 10 years from now may be different. Your bodies change, your desires change, things change. So, and there may be, and I don't understand this part of it, it's part of the aging process, we can ask Jesus when we get to the other side, it is sometimes some things that are sensitive now that weren't sensitive 20 years ago, physically. Who knew? So your own desires may change. So as the years go on, this is an ongoing discussion. It's not just, oh, well, we've settled that, we had that conversation. And so now until, you know, till death do us part, that's how it is. Not necessarily. That may change.
Or it may not, you may get a note on the piano.
That's right.
And you know, I would believe in healthy sexuality. Like if you don't talk about sex, okay, then you don't know where the spare key is for the handcuffs, you know? So the police have to come up to your house and you're embarrassed. That didn't happen to me. But I'm just saying, really talk about it because, you know, you'll be a fool. No, I was watching a special on it. And it's just like put an extra set of keys where you know where you can go get your partner out before the police have to come there.
Right, especially if you've got a warrant. Especially if there's a warrant out for your arrest, you don't really want the police showing up.
And like you said, just I can take this, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to be part of this, you know. And you can only wear this kind of belt.
Anybody else, anyone else have a question about sex? No, we're through. We're ready to move on. We're good, she says. We're good. Okay. The next topic, wills and powers of attorney. It is very important if you are going into marriage, especially. I think every single person, whether you are single, whether you're married, everybody needs a will. And everybody needs the 2 powers of attorney. So first of all, let's talk about a will. That is how you want anything that you own distributed when you die. Now, the law is going to dictate some of that for you if you get married. Okay? But you still need to designate what you want and how you want it to be distributed. So you need to see a lawyer. I think there are even some good things, programs online where you can do it now. You still have to have it signed in front of 2 witnesses and notarized, right, a notary public. To do that for it to stand up in court generally, although a holographic will can still stand. That's one that's written out in your own hand with your signature and dated. And if it, you know, although it's not as good because family can contest it. And I especially want to talk to same-sex couples about this. There are, this is no lie. We did a funeral on Friday. A couple, 2 men, that had been together over 50 years. Over 50 years. They were going to go and get married on Monday. And one of them, at 92 years old, died before they could go. And all of his family showed up for the funeral. And already you could hear the talk about how things were going to be distributed. Didn't matter they've been together 50 years. Family was ready to go in and take everything away from this man who had been in a relationship with his partner for 50 years. I just shook my head. Legally, there's nothing you can do. So, it is very important. Have a will. Have a will so that people know. And I have 2 or 3 copies of mine. I have them given to friends. So if one gets lost, well, here's a copy so you know what's going on. Open it, and I put on the envelope, open this in case of my death. They don't need to read it before then, but they need it then. And if I need update it, I'll go back to those people and update it. But you need that. Also, powers of attorney. There are two powers of attorney. One is a business power of attorney, where you can write checks or pay bills on behalf of the other person. Let's say that you've got your lights turned on in only one person's name because that person, you've worked it out, is paying the light bill out of that, utility bill. That's all fine and well and good. But what if that person's unconscious for 30 days in the hospital? Can't take care of business. Somebody still needs to take care of that. So if you get a power of attorney for the business, that means you can make business decisions for that person. The second one is a power of attorney over your health. That means that they can make health decisions. Let's say that you've had a car accident, you're on life support, you're brain dead, but the machines are still going. Who gets to decide? You need to decide together who is going to do your power of attorney. Now, let me just tell you something. Generally speaking, if you get married, the spouse gets first rights at that. However, if you put in writing you want someone else to be your power of attorney for either one of them, it is that person's responsibility. Let me tell you how this works. Several years ago, a lot of years ago now, one of my best friends, Derek, was getting married, and he and his partner came to me and said, we're getting married. Of course, I knew that. He said, we are working on our wills and our powers of attorney, and I'm going to be his power of attorney. And I was like, well, of course you are. He's going to be your husband. He said, but I want you to be my power of attorney. And I was like, wait, well, why? And he said, because he's already told me he cannot live with himself if he had to make a choice whether to leave machines on or turn them off. He can't live with himself. And I'm telling you right now to turn off the machines. So I know you can make that choice for him. He just cannot do it. He can't bear making the decision. Even though I'm telling him, but he can't do it. So I want you to be my power of attorney. I said, okay, as long as he's okay with it. He was like, absolutely, I just couldn't. I could never make that choice. I mean, I could make the choice, but I would probably commit suicide because I can't live with myself afterwards. I'm like, okay, got it. I can do it. So the reason I'm telling you that story is this. Just because you're married doesn't necessarily mean you have to be each other's powers of attorney. Ordinarily, that's the case, but it does not have to be. If you know that you don't want to be one of the two powers of attorney, tell your partner. It's okay. Lord knows if you can't tell that person, I don't know who you can tell. So you decide that on your own. But I also, remember we talked about children a while ago? If one of you already has children from another marriage, you need to decide as a couple, well, you know, I've got these children and I want to leave something to the children. You need to figure out how all of that works. Okay? It's important that you and I mean be very honest, even if you think it's going to hurt the other person's feelings. Other person that doesn't have children, try to be understanding that they had those children before they had you. And they want to make sure that they leave something for their children, more than likely. Maybe not, but more than likely. So you have to pay attention to that and work out something that is amenable and hopefully not too distasteful. You also may want to have children yourselves. And if you are planning to have children, you have to play, how does that play into it? And how, does that child fit equally into children from a different marriage? This is no different than what heterosexuals have been doing for years. Step parents, step children, and all of that. And I'm telling you, step parents can take everything away from natural born children. So I'm just saying, sit down and be willing to have a conversation and talk it out. It's that important. It's really important.
I wonder if there's something you could do, like I could leave all my bills to somebody, all my debt. Instead of leaving it to you, will it off to somebody that's got a bunch of money, right?
I fulfill all my debts to all kids.
No, but it is wonderful that you brought that up, because the very next line on here is a wedding versus a union ceremony. It is very important, just because now that same-sex marriage is legal, and it has been a fight that many of us, have been fighting for years and years. It does not necessarily mean you should rush out and get married. You can still have a union, even a holy union, that is in the church, recognized by the church and all of that, without having. When you do take it, there are benefits that married couples have that nobody else gets. All of us single people, we just don't get it. There are tax breaks that you're going to get. There are things that happen. But when you marry that person, you marry all of that person. That means you married their debt. It means you married their disability. It means you marry their bankruptcy. And you were talking about debts. You married their debts. And all of a sudden now their debts become your debts. And if they can't pay them, who else? The next person in line is you. So one of the things that I want to encourage people is this: weigh the benefits of legal marriage versus having a holy union. The church can still recognize your union. Here is the funny thing. I now have heterosexual people coming to me to officiate their holy unions that are not legal marriages. Why? One of them is collecting their dead spouse's Social Security, and it will be cut off if they get married. One is marrying someone who has declared bankruptcy and is living, on X amount of, I don't know how they're making it, on food stamps and some little disability check, and couldn't live on their own. They don't want to sign on to that. They don't want that. But they want their commitment to be recognized. Well, can I still call this person my husband or my wife? You can call it anything. You write it on the piece of paper. I'm the officiant. I read. That's my role. I read. I read what you put on the paper. Okay? I don't care what you call each other. The church can recognize one thing, whether it's legal or not. The legal part is a contract, though. It is a legal binding document. It's not like, oh, well, I had a holy union and next week I can just, throw that out and I can go date somebody else. You can do that with a legal marriage, but you know what? You're going to be caught up in court and have a lot of expenses if you're going to try to divorce and all of that stuff. That's going to be out of the church's hands and out of the pastor's hands, and I'm going to be on the, well, I sure do hate it for you committee. Okay? Because that's a legal matter. I can't deal with that. That's not what we do. I can act as an agent of the state to officiate your wedding, but I can't act as an agent of the state for your divorce. So keep that in mind. Do you really want, you just really need to make sure that the benefits, not just financial, for some people it doesn't matter about the financial at all. It's about, we want this, this is who we are, we have the right to do this, and we should do this. I have no issue at all with that. One of my best friends did that very same thing, and immediately was met with lots and lots of debt. And they are going to have to work hard for years to plow through all of that. But they are committed, and they wanted a legal marriage. But that person also told me now, months later, you better tell people to really pay attention to this because it's harder than it looks sometimes. You really need to have a firm discussion about, even if you decide you're going to do that, maybe the person needs to work through the bankruptcy first. That kind of thing. It doesn't mean you can never get married. It means you need to really pay attention, and if you don't know the answers, go find somebody, a financial guide of some sort, that can help you work through that. But it is important to work through the wedding versus do you want a legal wedding, legal marriage, or do you want a holy union? Either one works for me. Okay? So it is taking on whatever, like I said, you marry. Whatever that's the dowry. That's the hope chest. And that's the debt. So you have to really pay attention. Is this really what I want? And find out, if you're drawing pensions and all of that, find out what may be cut off if you make it a legal wedding. Fair enough? Do you have any questions up to this point? Then we're going to talk just a little bit about the wedding. Okay. The wedding. It's important that you obviously do the normal, usual things. If you're having a wedding, that you pick out a venue, whether you're going to have a director of some sort, the officiant, that's me, the preacher, or flowers, or music, or photography. Generally speaking, in a wedding, all of those people are paid. And you need to find out, if you work with a director, they'll probably give you a price list of everybody and everything. And you have to decide what all you want involved. So pay attention to that. And I'm really appreciative of Capital City Alliance for just putting that wedding venue together, wedding vendors together for us. And if you go online, you'll find even more. Because since they put that out, a lot of people say, well, I didn't get involved in that and I want to be in it. So there's a longer list. I will make sure you have one of those. I have a packet here. One of the things that we did here at Metropolitan Community Church, this is a little selling point. Here at Metropolitan Community Church, we put together 3 wedding packages for people at different price ranges and what you can expect. And I will give you a copy of that so you can take it with you. That doesn't mean you have to use it here. You can feel free to use the material wherever or whomever. It doesn't mean you have to hire me as the officiant. It doesn't mean you have to use this building. But it also has ceremonies, sample ceremonies in there. Did you realize, and I always find most people don't know this, they expect when they come in, they'll say, oh, well, you're going to marry us. Great, I'm the officiant. What ceremony do you want? Oh, I thought you just got up and said, dearly beloved, we gathered here. Okay. I can. I've got a little black book in my office, and I can do, that if you want it. But the ceremony, for me, is one of the most important things, because all that makes it legal is me pronouncing you and signing the contract. That's what makes it legal. None of the other words make it legal, because we have been having Holy Union since 1968 in Metropolitan Community Church. None of those words, none of those commitments, none of those ring exchanges and unity candles and sand ceremonies and hand tying ceremonies and jumping broom ceremonies and releasing doves and butterflies, none of that made it legal. None of it. It was all beautiful and wonderful. It was what the couple wanted, but none of that made it legal. What makes it legal is when, as an agent of the state, i.e. a minister that's registered with the state or a justice of the peace, says, I now pronounce you, and pronounces you, and then they actually sign the documents and send them in. That's what makes it legal. The ceremony really is tailored to you. What do you want to say to this person? What does that person want to say to you? What do you want to include in that? Do you want it a simple? We've had simple ones here. I've had them where we just were all kind of sitting around talking and laughing and having a good time like we do before and after church. And then at some point I just got up and said, may I have your attention, please? And would the couple come and stand here? And they just got up and we went through whatever they had decided. It was very informal. Other ones where we've, had one in that room and one in that room, and they couldn't see each other, and it was very traditional. And Lord, one of them even had little angels standing over here that lined their way, 2 on each side every few feet. These little kids that were little angels in angel outfits. And the bride walked through the angels to come up to the front. It was beautiful. All of that's wonderful. I was like, ooh, I might have to steal that. I'm not getting married. But it would have been pretty for a Christmas pageant too, wouldn't it? So the thing is, the ceremony is really yours. So make it yours. We put together 5 sample ones that you are certainly willing to take. We also have these online if you want me to send you a copy of those online, so you can, they're in Word documents, so you can like, oh, I want this line, oh, I want this paragraph, oh, in this one I want this section. They're samples, so you can just decide what you want. You can say, I don't want any of that. I'm going to start from scratch and just write my own. There are lots of websites. There are books in the public libraries. Go look at other ceremonies and see what you want. How do you want yours to look? Do you want a sand ceremony? Do you want the tying of the hands? Do you want to release the butterflies? I mean, all of that kind of stuff. You decide together what you want, but make it yours. I always encourage people, make it yours. What is it that makes yours yours? Don't just say it because somebody wrote it on a page, 5,000 years ago and we're still repeating the same words. Unless that's what you really want. Make it yours. And then the last thing on there, with that ceremony, the most important thing of all that I've said today is, if I am officiating your wedding or holy union, what am I wearing? Because it's all about what I wear. That's the most important thing. It's just whatever I'm wearing. And you may think that, I always think that's funny, and people look at me kind of like, why is that important? And I'm like, well, it's important because I want to look the part that you want me to look. I've had people that want to wear a black robe, a white robe, a stole of a certain color, collar, open shirt. I've done it barefooted on the beach with an open shirt and, linen clothes, flapping in the wind. And, it doesn't matter. I even had cowboy boots and spurs and cowboy hat and bolo and, what is it that you want me to wear? Be sure to let me know, because whatever it is, I'm going to wear it. I can do it. Pastor Penny can do it too. That's right. Sure will. It's your wedding. I want to be as accommodating as possible.
We had actually discussed for a slight minute about having a wedding where all the guys had to dress in women's clothes and all the women had to dress in guys' clothes. But nobody would come. So, at least none of our families would come.
See, even planning can be fun, can't it?
We were thinking about doing like Star Trek versus Star Wars too.
There are themed weddings. If you look around, there's some people at this church that have had themed weddings. A lot of country. And I'm not really that much of a country boy, but I got boots. I got a bolo. I got a hat. I got a hat. That's right. So you just tell me. Do you have questions about anything we've gone over on here? If you do, and you don't have them right now, feel free to send me an email. I hope you've enjoyed today's Pre-Marital Seminar, a couple's guide to readiness for marriage. If you would like more information, you can contact me directly at 225-248-0404, or you can email me at mccbr@aol.com. If you would like for us to email you a copy of our wedding package, please indicate that in your phone call or in your email to us. Have a good day.